Welcome to episode 4 of Web McWhorter, or SKREEEEEEONK. With me is local Godzilla professional and enthusiast, Mark Hazelton. Yeah, and he's got his Godzilla shirt on today.
I do have a Godzilla shirt on. I wore it for the occasion.
And today we are talking about Godzilla Half-Century War. The whole thing, it's 5 issues. We both read it.
We sure did.
We sure fucking did. Why don't you give us a little background on Godzilla for the dummies out there that don't know who he is?
Okay, well, if you haven't heard of Godzilla, you have big problems. Because he's a big deal.
Stupid.
Yeah, so Godzilla is a giant monster that crawled out of the ocean in 1954 and stomped all over Tokyo and killed lots of people with radioactive fire. That's what Godzilla is, and there's a really good movie about it. In fact, there's 28 really good movies about it.
Several.
Yeah, 28. Well, not all of them are good. There are some mediocre ones in there.
Yeah, there are.
But there's some great ones in there. So, there are also a series of comics. So I have most of those, and they're really good. Lots of fun.
This one is done by James Stokoe. He also writes the story, which is, I think, pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a good, well done.
Yeah. Obviously, he had a vision for what he wanted, and he executed it. And IDW puts out this Godzilla story, and they put out most of them, don't they?
They have the rights to them right now. So yeah, they've been putting them out for a little while. Dark Horse had them before IDW.
Yeah, Dark Horse. And Marvel got a taste too, way back in the day. And we're going to talk about the story. Like I said, it's separated into 5 chapters because it's the half-century war. It takes place over 50 years. It's between the main character Ota and Godzilla. He kind of develops this obsession for Godzilla in the first chapter when Godzilla rampages on Tokyo in 1954.
Yeah.
And he gets recruited because he's had special experience to the Anti-Megalosaurus Force, which is the AMF. And they're dedicated to using these soldiers to test new weapons that scientists are developing to kill Godzilla, which, as they discover, is basically impossible.
Yeah. Apparently they only invent new weapons every 10 years in the thing too.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There's nothing new in the first issue. The main character Ota and his supporting character, best friend Ken, which is short for Kentaro. They kind of distract Godzilla with this Sherman tank and save a bunch of civilians who are being evacuated out of the city.
Yeah, they nearly die, so it's pretty brave.
Yeah, and Ota does this sitting on top of the tank the whole time.
Like
no
a badass.
seatbelt. Yeah, no seatbelt or nothing. Just all balls to the wall. No,
He's the AMF.
he's a crazy motherfucker, as some might say. Anyways, so yeah, no new weapons in the first issue, obviously, because Godzilla, it's his first time seeing him. The second issue, chapter 2, it takes place in Vietnam in 1967. This is in the middle of the Vietnam War. AMF is actually chasing Godzilla because he's doing something different from his normal behavior, which is sticking to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And he goes to Vietnam, and they're like, "Why is he going to Vietnam?" And they chase him, and all the Godzilla experts, even the main character Ota, they have no idea what the fuck's going on. This is not his normal behavior, and they have a scientist there, this guy Dr. Randall, who's a Scott scientist.
He sure is.
And he's got a big red mustache. Looks like Dr. Eggman, kind of.
Yeah, he really does. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So he has invented these new weapons called masers that can shoot a hole into about half a mile of solid granite.
Yeah, they're a staple of the Godzilla universe.
Pretty much. So they gave a inventor face to him in this,
which is nice.
Story. Yes.
Cool.
Very cool. But they use these weapons on Godzilla, and they shoot him in the eye, and it distracts him pretty much. It doesn't show him like screaming in pain or anything, but he's kind of, what the fuck is that? And they do that because the base that they're at is run by this douchebag general who's like, "Oh, our bombs can take care of it." No. Godzilla doesn't even notice he's being bombed. He's still moving towards Saigon.
Yeah, they're worried that he's going to invade on their territory. You know, the general is.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to keep this war under control, and then
in favor
Godzilla gets in the way.
American troops.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty disastrous.
It is.
What happens next is Anguirus pops up from underground. Tell people about Anguirus real quick.
Yeah, sure. So, Anguirus is another giant monster that arises somewhere. We don't really know exactly where, but in this story, he comes out of Vietnam, and he first appears in the second Godzilla movie, Godzilla Raids Again.
Yes.
And that's actually the first time Godzilla ever battles another monster. So Anguirus is a really important figure for a few reasons, but he's not that powerful. You know, he's not that great. Doesn't have any fire breath or anything, so. Yeah.
They have a fight in which Godzilla pretty much just kind of bats Anguirus around. Anguirus tries to use his spikes on his little shell in the back there to damage Godzilla, but is really no more successful than the humans are with their weaponry. And Godzilla just kind of spanks him mercilessly. Right before the main characters are kind of like trampled or whatever, and killed by Godzilla, he turns around and starts going back to the ocean to move back towards Tokyo. And they're like, whoa, whoa. And in the middle of that issue, the colonel that recruited all these people like kind of disappeared, and you find out that he actually found this device called a psionic transmitter, was calling Godzilla and luring him in to its location. And that device, which is revealed in the beginning of the next chapter, or issue 3, which takes place in 1975 in Ghana. The device was invented by this guy, Dr. Deverick, for AMF. But when they decided that they wanted to go with a more destructive approach on anti-Godzilla weaponry, they shelved it, and he got pissed, and basically he's using it against the world now.
Yeah, he's basically trying to sell it to investors.
On the black market.
Dark, mysterious investors who are rich, but we don't know who they are.
Nameless organization.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's going on. Well, the reason they're in Ghana is because this dude is having this meeting that's televised with all these organizations and stuff trying to sell his device, and he's got them on so that he can give a demonstration as to what kind of power these giant monsters. Because at this point, there's tons of them.
Yeah.
They have.
And that's why this issue is so great. Really.
Yeah.
It really is.
They've got Godzilla, they've got Batra, they've got Mothra, they have Hedorah, Megalon, Rodan, and Evera. And if you don't know who any of those people are, well, you need to look them up and watch some movies.
Yeah.
You got homework.
Yeah. There's more than one movie for most of those guys.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, and they're all fighting in Ghana because their attention is caught by these psionic transmitters, and they're just wrecking the shit out of this town. It's pretty much leveled.
Yeah.
And this is in Africa.
This is in Accra, the capital of Ghana.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's completely wiped out.
Completely.
Yeah.
But the what's left of the AMF force, because some of them get wiped out, and they're split into different teams. There's about 2 people per team researching all these new monsters that have popped up, plus the 2 main characters who are researching Godzilla. What's left of them, they discover that Dr. Deverick is in Ghana, and they go looking for him, and they have to kind of drive through this battleground of all these monsters, which is pretty awesome. These 2 hippies, these 2 hippies that are following Mothra all the time. They have this little Volkswagen van.
Yeah, it's like a little flower power van kind of thing.
And then they drive through Hedorah, who's made of toxic goo.
Yeah.
So their little van that got them through all their adventures got put out to pasture. Yeah. And so they find Deverick, and he gets away though.
He was in the middle of a sales pitch.
Yeah.
So he was trying to. He had a camera on him, and he was pitching his device to these shadowy investors.
Yeah.
So.
And he turns up the power. That makes the monsters converge on that one spot.
On that one building.
Yeah. And they crush the foundation, which they're down in the basement or something, like a tunnel system, and the roof collapses, and everybody makes it through except the colonel, who gets caught. And this is the colonel that recruited everybody. So him and Ota is like a father figure to Ota, kind of. And he dies. He dies right there in that. He's dead.
Yeah, the Colonel's dead.
The colonel's dead.
Colonel!
Chapter 4, the next issue, Bombay, skips up to 1987. At this point, Ota is probably in his late 40s, I would imagine. He's
At least.
Yeah.
Because he's an old man by the end of it.
Yeah. These are 10-year intervals. They're going to skip ahead 20 years after this issue that we're talking about right now. But Bombay, 1987, this is the first time that a Mechagodzilla built by the humans is launched against Godzilla. But unbeknownst to the AMF, Deverick is in town with a new, more upgraded version
Indeed.
of the psionic transmitter. While Mechagodzilla is fighting Godzilla, and he's doing a pretty good job at it, you know, he's holding his own at least. He's not defeating Godzilla, but he's standing up against him pretty well. Ota, who is 2 miles away, surveying the fight, watching this, because he and his partner, they follow around Godzilla. That's their job. He notices Dr. Deverick, and he follows him to another deal, where he's selling this upgraded, much stronger psionic transmitter.
Yeah, he actually says that he perfected it.
Yeah, that he perfected it, and that's 1,000 times more powerful. The signal is. That note, this giant crystalline meteor falls from the sky, and Space Godzilla walks out and instantly just takes down Mechagodzilla and starts spanking Godzilla pretty hard. Gets him down and then starts pelting him with these crystals. It looks pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's really well done, really well drawn stuff too.
Yeah, and you can really feel the threat that this guy brings, and he's definitely not like any of the other monsters who Godzilla is clearly the king of. King of all monsters.
Yeah, including space monsters.
Including space monsters. Because the crystalline structure proves to be Space Godzilla's power source, and Ota climbs into the wreckage of Mechagodzilla, starts beating away at the buttons and gets him to reboot, and he unloads the entire arsenal of Mechagodzilla and destroys this big crystalline meteor, and Space Godzilla loses his ability to kick Godzilla's ass, and Godzilla kicks his ass. Like one hit, just blows him away like that. And that's that story. That's the first time that Ota teams up with Godzilla. He teams up with him again in the next chapter, which we will talk about here in a sec, because it takes place 20 years later.
Yeah, sure does.
In 2002. 2002, Chapter 5, the last part of this story. It's basically the end of the world, because half of it has been destroyed by the arrival of these two like space monsters, similar to Space Godzilla, but like way powerful. And one of them is even way bigger than Godzilla, and that's King Ghidorah, the three-headed dragon.
Heck yeah.
Space dragon, and he's gold. He shoots lightning, he's super epic.
Pretty badass.
Yeah. And then his sidekick Gigan, who is like a cyborg.
He's yeah, they say he's a cyborg, so whatever that means. Yeah.
There's not much to tell about Gigan.
Well, he's got a similar story. I mean, he's
just not as powerful.
He's just not as powerful as, he's obviously not as powerful as King Ghidorah.
Yeah.
But similar origin.
Pretty much.
Came along later in the movies.
Yeah. So they've wiped out half the world.
Yeah.
And Ota and Ken are on this little ice island structure area. It's a base of some kind for AMF. You know, they're waiting for the arrival of Ghidorah and Gigan, because they're summoning them with these psionic transmitters. Because in the previous issue, Dr. Deverick was caught by Ota, and they, you know, he died or something, or they, you know, arrested him, imprisoned him, however.
Yeah, they don't really address it.
No, really. So now they have that technology, so they're using it to their advantage by luring the space monsters into one position, where they will unleash their new black hole gun and their upgraded Mechagodzilla. So,
pretty cool design.
and also they want Godzilla there, of course.
Yeah.
Because the plan is for the black hole gun, Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla to be too much for these two alien invaders, and Ota's ultimate plan, because he knocks out the pilot and takes his place. His ultimate plan is to sacrifice himself, throwing Godzilla into the black hole as well, and getting his final revenge on Godzilla. But he does team up with his nemesis to defeat these two space monsters. And that's probably the toughest fight there.
Yeah,
because
super badass.
Yeah, although Space Godzilla does beat up Godzilla quite a bit, he pretty much one-shot Space Godzilla in the end there.
Yeah.
But this fight goes on for quite a bit, and there's a lot of dialogue during it, a lot of action happening. It takes up quite a bit of that section. And eventually there's this countdown going on the whole time. Eventually it reaches 0. That's the black hole gun. And King Ghidorah and Gigan are forced into one spot by Mechagodzilla and Godzilla. And the black hole gun goes off and sucks them in. And it keeps pulling in, because black holes don't just appear, suck in two monsters and disappear. That would be really lame if they did that, and I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah.
So it keeps sucking shit in. And Mechagodzilla is being torn apart by the force of it, and Ota's like trying to get Godzilla to acknowledge him. He's like chased this monster his whole life, and he feels like he's kind of pathetic. But he's like, if I can just get him to acknowledge that I'm the one, I'll die happy. And Godzilla looks at him, and he's like, okay, I'm cool. And he gets sucked into the black hole. You're led to believe that Godzilla gets sucked in as well. But after the island basically disappears into the black hole as well, and the black hole itself goes away, there's a few icebergs floating around, and you see Godzilla's spines pop up out of the water. So Godzilla wins and Ota dies. Yay, Godzilla! And that's the whole story.
We should have known. I mean, folks really, really familiar with the movies are going to recognize, hopefully, that the dimension-tied black hole gun will not kill Godzilla.
Yes.
Because it has failed in the movies.
The important thing is that he's unstoppable.
Yeah.
And that the writer/artist agreed. So I will say that the art for this is pretty good. At times it reminds me a bit of Gorilla's music video. Kind of that kind of art style, but it's also very well done. Everybody kind of looks Asian to me in this. But it's still a very detailed and the monsters look great.
Yeah.
And it's inventive, the kind of things that he does with some of them, like Anguirus and Godzilla, with their scales being more armor plate kind of looking.
Yeah, really, really good looking, really good detail.
Yeah. And the story's awesome. The writing's good. The guy, like I said earlier, he clearly had a vision for the story that he wanted, and so he drew all these pictures, and they look freaking awesome. Yeah. The only thing I would complain about, though, is that the length for some of these bits, especially the part in the 70s, when they introduced that there's all these teams assigned to certain monsters, I felt like those were bonus characters that could have been explored a bit further.
Oh, yeah.
There's definitely certain parts of this that should have been multiple issues long, in my opinion. But that's not the way they did it. It's still enjoyable, though, and I would recommend picking it up to read.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, compared to pretty much all the other Godzilla comics, it's one of the best. I really have a soft spot for Marvel's iteration of Godzilla. It's really classic Godzilla with no other Godzilla monsters, obviously, but if you want to see that kind of stuff, that's great. But this is a whole nother level. He's taken actual content from the movies besides just the monsters. He's included many different weapons and technologies and stuff like that from the movies and combined them into one universe, which I really like. It's a really, really well done progression of events leading up to the final events in the whole thing.
For sure.
Yeah, with the art, I love the art. The coloring is it's stylistic in its own way, but I think it's kind of weird too. It does the job. For sure.
There's lots of reds and oranges.
Yeah, it's a very red and orange and purple kind of shading throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is, it's okay, but it feels like it was easier to do, or like it was.
Yeah, like that's definitely his style.
Yeah, it's just what he felt he should do.
For sure.
I mean, it works out great. I mean, the level of detail in these things is pretty crazy. So,
Pretty crazy.
yeah. Definitely one of the best Godzilla comics out there. So
By far.
you should definitely get it. It's fairly recent too, so it's still easy to find.
I think for a rating, just because I would want to see more of some of this, I would give it like a 4 out of 5. Not quite perfect, but it's damn near there.
Yeah. My main complaint with it is the length. I mean, compared to other I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for me. But yeah, I mean, if it had been fleshed out more, I mean, that would be an additional star.
So Godzilla Half Century War, check it out.
Yeah.
And look for the Godzilla movie coming out next year. We might have to do this again and talk about that. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
You want to say Excelsior?
Excelsior.
Excelsior.